So my scary cyber story, that would probably be back in around 2002. I was about 2.5 years in on my IT career at that point, and I received a phone call from an FBI agent who was informing me of a breached website where several credit cards have been compromised and illegal purchases made on credit cards across several different private accounts. When the FBI agent started to question me about the particular website that was involved with the compromise and the stolen credit card information, I quickly started to realize that this was a website that I was actually hosting inside my house. So prior, I don't know how long prior, maybe a year or so prior, when I was working in e-commerce, I was working with a gentleman who ended up shutting down his business, and he had about 15 customers that he was hosting websites and email for. One of those customers was an e-commerce customer. Everybody else was just websites and email. At that point in time, I decided that I was going to host the websites and everything out of my house. So I actually had a full stack of servers all racked and stacked, and web servers, database servers, firewalls, those types of things put in place. And then that's when I realized, as I was talking to the FBI agent, he was talking about the e-commerce site that I had hosted there in my house. And he started to begin to question me about the security aspects around the hosting. First, he did ask about the location, and I explained that it was in a house, and it was my house, and it was in a dedicated room. I actually had a dedicated room and dedicated air conditioning and security cameras and everything in the room, which he was somewhat shocked that I had that level of security. We also rescue pit bulls. So I also informed the FBI agent that, we also had pretty decent physical security around the premise as well, since we'd rescued pit bulls. So, and we also lived on a dead end street. So anybody coming back to my house, it was pretty well known if you were coming back that road. It wasn't a paved road, so it was a very low traffic road. But I was quickly becoming very nervous that I was going to be blamed for many, many thousands of dollars being stolen from several different people with credit cards. As we, reviewed everything, he was pretty shocked that I actually had a firewall in place, that I was running my database on a separate server than my web front end was running. And these are all things that I just stood up and configured them that way based on my prior experience working in e-commerce and making sure that you architect platforms properly. So at that point, I was extremely nervous because I was like, I'm going to jail. How am I going to prove that this isn't me? Right? Because I've got the data inside my house. So how am I going to prove that it isn't me? I'll be honest, I'd been in a little bit of trouble back when I was a teenager before I became an adult. And I was worried that stuff was still following me around too. So all said and done, what ended up happening, when he explained what was happening, I started doing an investigation. The middle of my investigation, so my investigation took about 3 days total. And this was the first time that I'd ever done an incident response at all, ever in my life. I'd never read about doing them. I was just using straight up, engineering skills and platform operation skills to try and do an incident response, figure out what happened, and try and make sure that I cleared myself from any type of, negligence or wrongdoing, as they try to do their investigation. During that, when I was doing my investigation, I actually ended up moving the website. It was a very simple website, just a web front end, database back end, nothing very complex or anything. And I ended up moving the website to a hosting facility in Arizona during that. while I was doing my investigation, I could see that they were still getting in. So that certainly led me to believe that this was not anything associated with my infrastructure or anything that I was running. So I informed the FBI agent during that. He was surprised that I was actually able to move the website, and it probably took me like 30 minutes to move it. So he was surprised that I got all that switched over, and then I was still seeing the malicious traffic. So then I started digging into the application and the database itself, and we found that the people that were running the website, they weren't encrypting the credit card information. They would actually go in and manually process the credit cards out of a management queue on the backside of the website. And then once they did that, they would click a button which would encrypt and obfuscate the credit card data from there. Well, the attackers had brute forced the administrator's password to get into the website, which gave them access, a short window of access for purchases that may have been made on the website, and they hadn't been manually processed. So therefore, the manager hadn't gone in and hit that little button to encrypt that data. So I spent about 3 days going through web server, database logs, and all the application logs. And about the third day in, we figured out that they'd breached the password. So we'd gone ahead and reset that password. And we also put geo location IP restrictions on access to the website. And in the middle of the night, that was a little bit weird and scary too. In the middle of the night, I could actually see them coming in at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and trying to authenticate. And we'd actually set the screen up so it just kind of bounce you back to the login page. We wouldn't throw an error saying that you failed or that you didn't meet a location restriction. We just bounced it back so it looked like it was something weird going on with authentication. And you could see them constantly hitting it. And they did that for about 2 or 3 nights straight, and until they finally stopped because they realized that they weren't getting back in at that point. So there you go. That's my cybersecurity scary story where I thought I was going to end up in jail for credit card fraud, and had to spend 18 hours a day, 3 days straight, going through logs to prove to the FBI that it wasn't me, and how these people were actually running the scam, getting the data, and then they actually set up a phishing site to get the three-digit card numbers from the customers as well. So there you have it. There's my cybersecurity scary story.